Dear learners, I am Christina Georgy and I welcome you to my session on literary criticism and theory. Before moving further, let me clarify that this is a specialized session specifically designed for the MEG learners. Hence, all the aspects discussed here will be solely based on the official study material for MEG 5. In our previous session, we discussed one of the most relevant contemporary literary theories. If you remember, we discussed postmodernism. So in this particular session, we will focus our attention towards psychoanalysis, yet another very important contemporary literary theory. So this session would not only help you to understand your MEG 5 topic, but also this is very relevant in your general understanding of English literature. That is, for your other papers when you study novels or dramas and other genres, literary genres, this particular theory of psychoanalysis would certainly help you read the inner conflicts and mental aspects of at least a few characters in some particular novels, plays or other literary genres. So let me make sure that I am clearly audible. Am I clearly audible? Yes, thank you. So as I already mentioned, as requested by some learners, I will be recording this session. So if there is any lag or audio problem, please let me know in the chat box. Okay? Yeah. So psychoanalysis falls under Unit 3 of Block 8 of your IGNO official study material for the course code MEG 05. As I always mention, course codes, program codes, block titles are all very mandatory to keep in mind. Because unless you know the block titles and block names, it would be very difficult for you to understand from which block this particular question has come for the examination. I am referring to your TEE. To some extent, if you know to which block does this particular question belong, then you'll be able to frame a basic structure for your essay. I'm very sure that all my dear learners are well aware of the question pattern. You'll be having essay type questions of 20 marks each. So basically you're expected to write essays for whatever they ask for. Now comes the quintessential question, ma'am, how many pages should I write? So I've been answering this. See, it doesn't matter the number of pages. It is the content that matters. But at the same time, you should be sensible enough to write for 20 marks. So as I always say, if you could take an estimate of the booklet that you get, there are 26 pages on which you can write. A total of 28 are there. The 27th page would be for rough work and the 28th page contains instructions. So you can write in on all those 26 pages if I write about this. Yes, as much as I am aware of, there hasn't been a change and additional booklets won't be provided. I assure you that for MEG 5 you won't need additional booklets unless you write in a very big font or you leave blank pages or you just cut off pages. Dear learners, please be aware of all these facts. Now you have reached your second year course. I'm not very sure whether at least some of you are re-attempting some of the first year papers. Even if you are doing so, make sure that you don't simply cross answers. Plan your answers before you write. Trust me, you have enough and more time. Okay, so let's speak about all these aspects towards the end of the lesson. Right now, let me introduce you to Unit 3 of Psychoanalysis. That is, in this particular unit, I hope you located this in your respective study material. I'll be following the study material with some extra inputs that will help you understand this concept much better. So this particular unit gives you a basic idea of what psychoanalytic criticism is. Psychoanalytic criticism is. We'll also discuss some of the crucial notions in this particular literary theory of psychoanalysis. That is identity, sexuality, the unconscious, desire, and many more. So we'll be discussing all these concepts within the framework of the main ideas put forth by two important figures in the history of psychoanalysis. Now comes your chance to answer. Do you know these two people that I'm referring to? I'll give you clues. These people are well renowned in the field of psychoanalysis. Whenever we study psychoanalysis, we mention these names. When I taught you Oedipus complex, I think in one of the other papers, we discussed this person, one of them. Yes, very true. I appreciate your answer, Adira. You know the full name of this person? There is some minor correction in the spelling, but still I understand. Fast moving fingers. Yeah. You know the full name of this person? Yeah, he's popularly known as Sigmund Freud. Yes, I appreciate that. Now there is one more person. I'm not very sure that you are much aware of this person. I'll give you a clue. He is often known as the French Freud. Yes, correct. Lacan. So, Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan are the two most celebrated figures in the history of psychoanalysis. So, one disadvantage of this unit is that we'll be limiting our study based on just these two people and a selected few concepts put forth by them. Please understand that psychoanalysis is a vast area, but for your TEE, our study material has limited the study on psychoanalytic criticism to just a few important concepts. Hence, I'll be focusing our study or our discussion for today based on just those concepts clearly and evidently mentioned in our official study material. Please have that idea clearly ingrained in your brains. It's not just limited to these concepts, but for your TEE, we are restricting our study based on just these few concepts mentioned in your study material. Nevertheless, I feel like for the general and better understanding of this theory and also this type of criticism, I think I better give you an introduction to psychoanalytic criticism. Psychoanalysis is much familiar to each and every one of you, I believe. Have you ever studied about psychoanalysis? Anybody? I'll help you. Psychoanalysis is a set of theories. It also includes some therapeutic techniques that deal in part with the unconscious mind, and these together form a method of treatment for mental disorders. So we can say that this discipline of psychoanalysis was established in the year 1890s. 1890s. Who must have established this? Of course, you can guess it right. Sigmund Freud. So his works were also influenced by some other people. If you are interested into learning much more regarding psychoanalysis, you can read this up maybe online or on any other platforms. So the main goal of psychoanalytic theory is to bring unconscious material into consciousness and enhance the functioning of the ego. So at this moment you may not be familiar with all these concepts of unconscious, ego, etc. In course of time we will discuss all these aspects when we deal with Sigmund Freud in detail. So now you got an understanding of what psychoanalysis is, right? Even while reading some textbooks, I'm not very sure whether you have studied any particular text where psychoanalytic reading has been mentioned. Now I'll give you a brief introduction to psychoanalytic criticism. Alright, so this particular branch of criticism emerged in the 1960s, and as you can guess, it is the most influential interpretive theory the post-war period has ever seen. What do you mean by the post-war period? You must already have an idea. After the wars, that is the modern period. Okay. So as I mentioned, this theory and this criticism as such is based on the works of one particular psychoanalyst He is an Austrian intellectual. I've seen students writing Australian. Dear ones, it's not Australian, it's Austrian. It is a matter of concentration. At times when we read something, we get to have this practice of memorizing what we already know. See, Australia must be much more familiar to a student than Austria, right? So this is also something that happens in the unconscious. Okay, so remember, Sigmund Freud is an Austrian intellectual and psychoanalyst. So he, along with some other notable people like Marx, Darwin, Nietzsche, I'm not sure whether you are aware of all these people. So all of them together subverted the centers of Western society. You just need to remember that. And speaking about psychoanalysis, if we look into our study material, section 3.1 provides some introductory remarks. So what is psychoanalytic criticism? If you could look into your study material, it mentions the definition put forth by Peter Barry. So who is Peter Barry? Obviously you would be having this idea that he is an author because his book and its name is mentioned. Yes, indeed, he is a contemporary critic or a postmodernist critic, I would say, who has written a book based on theories. And his book is titled Beginning Theory. It also has a subtitle, An Introduction to Literary and Cultural Theory. So, as I just remembered, I would like to tell you this aspect, that is, whenever you're writing a title of a work for your TEE, make sure that you write the full title. Okay, for example, some people just write Beginning Theory. It's fine, we understand that you have written the main title, but it would be great, it would leave an impression in the mind of the examiner if you could write the full title. So what do you mean by the full title of a work of art? A full title includes both the main title and the subtitle. Are you following me? Can I have some response so that it wouldn't look monotonous? I'm not interacting much with you basically because psychoanalytic criticism would be probably a new topic for you. So shall we continue? Yes. So let's have a look at the full title, Beginning Theory, An Introduction to Literary and Cultural Theory. Okay. Whenever you write the full title, capitalize the content words. Okay. See, I've been seeing this mistake made by the students over a course of time. Hence, I even did a video on how to write proper title. If anybody is interested, you can refer to that. I understood that most students are not aware of content words and function words. In English language, there are function words. Those words that do not have individual existence or meaning on their own. For example, conjunctions, prepositions, etc. At the same time, there are content words such as nouns, verbs, adverbs, etc. They need to be capitalized. Just keep that in mind. So, let's have a look at the definition put forth by Peter Barry, that psychoanalytic criticism is, I quote, a form of literary criticism which uses some of the techniques of psychoanalysis in the interpretation of literature. I unquote. So, whenever you are referring to a quote from a person for your TEE, you will have to quote it in double inverted commas, open quotes, end quotes, and put full stop. Okay, that is the way you need to do. I am very much aware that for the first year you have not done that. At least the majority have not done that, but you have reached the final year, so it's high time for you to follow the techniques of writing. The page number and stuff, it is not mandatory. You don't have to buy hard things. But occasionally, the year of publication of one of the most important works in a particular chapter, you will have to remember, ideally. That's all. Alright. So, I would suggest you to study this particular definition of psychoanalytic criticism put forth by Peter Barry. So, speaking about Sigmund Freud, as you know, as I mentioned, he is an Austrian psychoanalyst. The interesting aspect is that he was practicing at that time, and practicing in the sense he was practicing as a psychoanalyst. And in his earlier career days, he examined cases of hysteria. Have you heard of hysteria? Any idea what hysteria is? Hysteria is basically a nervous disorder. It is also known as conversion disorder these days. And later, he focused on concepts such as identity, sexuality, unconscious, and all these concepts became his major concerns. Nevertheless, his biggest contribution has been that he gave us new and powerful ways of looking at human thought and behavior. We look at all these in course of time. Let me also introduce Jacques Lacan to you. Lacan was also a French psychoanalyst. An interesting aspect is that he was also a practicing psychiatrist. Dear ones, remember, psychoanalyst and psychiatrist are two different entities. It's not the one and the same. Psychoanalyst and psychiatrist, or rather, psychiatry is different from psychoanalysis. Psychiatrist would be a practicing doctor. Psychoanalyst at the same time is not a practicing doctor. You need to know this basic difference. There are people who are not aware of all these things. We get to read interesting things in assignments and other write-ups that some submit. So he was a French psychoanalyst and psychiatrist, as I mentioned, and another interesting aspect is that he is described as the most controversial psychoanalyst since Freud. That is, after Freud, he was the most controversial, or rather most attention sought psychoanalyst of the era. He was not from Austria. Remember, Freud was from Austria, whereas Lacan from, I told you, he is a French psychoanalyst. Hence, Lacan was often referred to as French Freud. Maybe you can write this for your examination also. I don't think this is mentioned in your study material. Somewhere in your study material, maybe you can write this. Lacan is also, or very often, referred to as the French Freud. Alright? Yes. So basically, Lacan provided re-reading of Freud's theories. At the same time, we can say that Lacan in a way reworked on Freud's theories. He revised it in the light of linguistics. When we think of Lacan, linguistics must be thought of. He has close connection with linguistics. In what way? He reread Freud's theories in the light of linguistics. And the most significant part of his work is on subjectivity and desire. Subjectivity and desire. Subjectivity is a term that we have been using for quite a long time. I understand that you are aware of it. But in this framework of psychoanalysis, there could be some different grades and shades to this concept. We'll study that in detail. Now, otherness and lack are also some notable concepts that are tied up with these. Otherness. What do you mean by otherness? When we studied feminist theories, sex is a work written by Simone de Beauvoir. So in this work, it is mentioned that women are considered as the other, whereas the normal is considered as if the man. The man and his other. That is this concept of otherness. Do you know who put forth this concept of otherness? Have you studied that? I remember it used to be a question for IGNO assignments. It is a type of stigmatization used against women. Okay? Yeah, just understand that man is considered the normal and women are considered the other. It is a concept also discussed by Lacan. And lack, what do you mean by lack? Females lack what males have. It is a reference to maybe phallus, which is the genital organ. So you will study all these concepts. Remember Oedipal complex that we have studied, all these in psychoanalysis. So yes, one important thing that you need to remember about Lacan is that he has a book titled Erotic. Okay, it is published in the year 1966. It is also mentioned in your study material. That book and its name should be studied. Now let's move on to section 3.2. Are you following me? Are you referring to your study materials? I'm trying to explain as simple as possible. Yes. So now we look at some of the main ideas put forth by Sigmund Freud. As I mentioned earlier, this concept of unconscious is of great importance. That is, according to him, according to whom? According to Freud, he believed that the larger part of the individual's mental processes were unconscious. All of us are only aware of what is in our conscious, right? But he was of the opinion that the larger part of an individual's mental process happens in the unconscious. So it is in the unconscious where all these repressed thoughts appear. What do you mean by repression? That is, each individual would have some kind of desires. It could be sexual or not, or all such thoughts or feelings which are not appropriate to be expressed by the conscious would be suppressed, and that could be explained as if repression. Okay, repression is indeed a form of suppression of all these things in the unconscious, and it is also said that all these repressed ideas are seen as dreams by an individual. So all these are concepts and ideas put forth by Sigmund Freud. So I'll read from the text to give you clarity. On account of the powerful taboos attached to certain sexual impulses. Yeah. So a number of them come to be repressed, that is, actively excluded from conscious awareness. That could define repression. Repression means actively excluding certain thoughts and feelings from conscious awareness. So at the same time, there are a number of things in our mental makeup on which we do not have much conscious control. Obviously, we don't have much conscious control on many things that are happening, right? Many conscious processes also become latent soon after being conscious for a short period. This happens in case of dreams, right? All of us must have dreamt. Even if not on a daily basis, at times we see dreams while we sleep. So at times it could be a good dream, a happy dream. At the same time, some dreams could be terrifying. Okay. There is a term in English language that is used for terrifying dreams. Anybody knows? In cartoons, like maybe you must have heard of this. I had a nightmare. What does that mean? Nightmare. Yes, it refers to a terrifying dream, a not so pleasant dream. Are you following me? Nightmare. Okay? Yeah. So we were discussing that many conscious processes also become latent soon after being conscious for a short period. One interesting aspect about most dreams are that most of them we might remember right after we wake up, but after some point of time we might forget the details. Have you ever had such an experience? Unless you make a conscious effort to remember, you won't be able to remember it for a long time. Alright? Yes. So, regarding the unconscious, one variety of the unconscious is that what gets transformed into conscious material more easily and under conditions that are available to us more frequently. The other is where such a transformation is not that easy. So, regarding the unconscious, at times, what is in the unconscious gets transferred into conscious very easily. But, on the other hand, at at times, such a transformation from unconscious to conscious, it's not that easy. In some cases, this transformation does not come about at all. So there are three scenarios. Scenario 1, easy transformation. Scenario 2, difficult transformation. Scenario 3, impossible transformation. So Freud's concern is more with the second variety of the unconscious. What is the second variety? Transformation that is not that easy. So that is what is mentioned in that paragraph. Moving on to talking cure. So you must have heard of this talking cure. So if you are students of psychology, you study that as part of counseling psychology. So when you discuss counseling psychology, this talking cure has overt significance, I believe. Psychoanalysis as therapy is also referred to as a kind of talking cure. That is, Freud came upon a method of analysis in which patients would say whatever came to their mind, regardless of how seemingly meaningless it is. That is, when we speak to a client, or rather a patient, we listen to, a counselor listens to this person, and this person would have the freedom to speak or reflects on the thoughts that he or she is having, regardless of its meaning or significance. Okay, so Freud's special interest was in patients with neurotic symptoms, which pointed to unresolved conflicts between their unconscious inclinations or feelings and the repressive demands of the ego. Remember, I told you he focused on cases of hysteria when I mentioned the introductory aspects of Freud. So here we study that he was interested in patients with neurotic symptoms. You can remember that. So now we'll discuss the three psychic zones that were put forth by Freud. Here comes id, ego and superego. So a probable question for your TEE, which are the three psychic zones put forth by Sigmund Freud? These are the ego, the id and the superego. So have you already studied all these as part of some other paper? If so, I'll explain in that manner, or else if you are totally unaware, I'll provide you a detailed lecture. Can you help me? This could be a bit difficult. Just try to understand. I'll explain once again. Okay? The id, ego and superego. Right now, we'll focus on the id. Okay? So the id is basically tied up with the libido. What do you mean by libido? Libido. It refers to the sexual energy. Okay? So the id is in a way the reservoir of the libido. Hence, it knows no good or evil. It refers to the instincts, the feelings that comes into you, the urge that you would feel. So it goes for the pleasure principle. Underline this concept, pleasure principle. So the id always follows the pleasure principle, which is the primordial life principle. The id would always have an impulse to obtain satisfaction for instinctual needs. Okay, for example, I'll help you out with a real life scenario. I want you to make sure that you wouldn't write this example for your TEE. This is just explained to make you understand the concept. Okay? Suppose you are a singer or an orator. An orator would be a person who is supposed to speak for a long time. Or else, if you are a teacher, even if you are a teacher who takes continuous classes, this scenario will be applicable. I'm speaking from my experience. Okay? At times, we all crave for things, right? There wouldn't be anybody who doesn't love food. Food would be one common interest for most of the students present here, right? Are you interested in having food? By the way, did you have your breakfast? I suppose you did, because having your breakfast is of very importance. Yes, never skip your breakfast. Yeah. So food. So if you're a singer or a narrator or a teacher like me, at times you might have this craving to have an ice cream occasionally, right? An ice cream could be of different flavors and types and toppings. At times you will have this desire of tasting the delicacy of an ice cream. But considering your condition, or even if you have an allergy towards an ice cream, or if you have restrictions in putting on weight, or if you need to protect your throat because of your profession, you might not be advised to have an ice cream. But still, you will have this instinct of having an ice cream. So that instinct comes from your id. So that denotes your id. Do you follow me? I hope so. So now, at the same time, you are very much aware that if I eat this ice cream, if you are allergic towards an ice cream flavor, you'll have this idea that if I have this, I'll develop an allergy. If you are very conscious of putting on weight, you will have this idea in your mind that if I eat this ice cream, I'll put on calories. If you are very conscious of protecting your throat because of your profession or for some other reason, you'll be having this idea that, oh, if I have an ice cream at the moment, I'll have throat issues. I wouldn't be able to speak with clarity for such a long period of time. So all these are thoughts within yourself that restrict you from having an ice cream at the moment. Do you follow me? So a moral censoring happens within your mind, and this is the superego working in you. So the superego is a kind of moral censoring agency. This one is the advocate of learning towards or leaning towards perfection. That is, it is the superego that controls the pleasure principle. Hence, superego would serve as a morality principle. Alright? If you feel like having an ice cream, superego would tell you, oh no, this is not the right time and the right moment to have an ice cream. So, there will be a constant clash between your id and your superego. That is, your id would tell you, have the ice cream. Your superego would tell you, do not have the ice cream. So, there happens this conflict between the id and the superego. Hence, there should be a peacemaker, right? See, if you have this idea of the good angel and the bad angel, good angel tells you not to do something, bad angel will tell you, do that, do that. Similarly, you can study this concept based on some ideas that you may be able to relate to. This is how I used to remember. Okay, so there should be a peacemaker between the id and the superego. Any guesses who that would be? A middle ground between the id and the superego. Wonderful. I'm very sure that you understood the concept. Ego. This is where ego plays a crucial role. So the ego is a kind of rational governing agent of the psyche. So the ego is largely governed by the world out there. That is, it regulates the instinctual drives of the id so that a basic ground may be formed between the superego and the id. Okay, it acts as if a peacemaker between these two, and it is the ego that works. So dear learners, have this idea. It is not anything related to the ego that we speak in common parlance. At times students say, oh, this person is very egoistic. So Freud's concept of ego is actually based on reality principle. So if you summarize, id is based on pleasure principle. Superego is based on morality principle. And ego is based on reality principle. So that is id, superego and ego for you. Did you understand? Should I explain in Malayalam also? Manasilayo? We don't have much time. If you say yes, I'll proceed. If not, I'll explain once more. Moving on to some other thoughts from Sigmund Freud, child psychology and sexuality are among important aspects of Freud's thoughts. That is, Freud saw the child passing through a series of phases, each marked by the dominance of a particular erogenous zone. What do you mean by erogenous zone? That is a portion of our system where pleasure comes to be largely localized. So I'll explain this in simple terms. According to Sigmund Freud, a child during his or her process of growing up goes through a series of stages, okay, marked by the dominance of a particular zone of pleasure. Okay, but when you write for TEE, you need to write the technical term of erogenous zone itself. Alright. So these phases are phases in erotic development in the child's first 5 years or so. So we are speaking about children from 0 to 5 years of age. During this time, they will have this development. Okay, erotic development is what is mentioned. So the three zones, which are they? The three zones of erotic development mentioned in your study materials are the oral zone, the anal zone and the genital zone. These zones not only deals with pleasure in stimulation but also with the gratification of vital human needs such as food, excretion, etc. I think I don't need to focus much on these. It is self-explanatory. If you are interested in knowing more, you can refer to your study material, or the information in your study material is limited, or you can Google and see. Okay, so I can explain. The oral zone would basically refer to the baby's feeding orally and such aspects. The anal zone would refer to the excretion process, and the genitals also are important in these. So through all these zones, it is said that the child would experience some level of pleasure by feeding, by excreting and all those aspects. So during the first stage, the child deserves satisfaction through sucking, and this process of sucking from the mother's breast is pleasurable. The next stage leads to sensations of the child, expulsion, bringing relief to the child by removing the source of tension, that is excretion. This process is also seen as a pleasurable activity. Then comes a stage of preoccupation with the genitals. The name of this zone is the phallic erogenous zone. The phallic stage, okay, that is also very relevant. So dear learners, let me explain that your study is limited to whatever is mentioned in the study material. Actually, when you learn Freud, you study about the psychosexual stages of development in a child, which is a much more elaborative concept put forth by Sigmund Freud. But I repeat, for your TEE, for your study material, only this much is mentioned. Alright. So around the age of 5, the child's devotion to his mother and his identification with his father start proceeding side by side until his sexual wishes in regard to his mother start asserting themselves. So there is a term for this feeling. You must be knowing that. If you are a student of English literature, you must have come across this at some point in time. Have you heard of the Oedipus complex? Yes, you should be. Okay, so it refers to a male child's sexual wishes in regard to his mother in a way. Alright, so if you need to know more about Oedipus complex, just turn on to page number 22. I suppose it's the same page number in your study material. You may see a section titled keywords, 3.8 keywords. In that keyword, there is explanation for all these terms used by Freud. Oedipus complex, a reference in Freud's theory to the unconscious wish of every male child to have sex with his mother and to eliminate his father. That is the explanation given by Sigmund Freud. Phallus, a term in psychoanalytic theory for the authority invested in the male. When we study Lacan, we'll understand that in Lacan, it is the symbol of power associated with the law of the male penis. Now comes lack and desire. I already explained lack for you. Lack is located in the fact of desire being founded on a primordial absence yet being committed to a necessarily futile quest for what is lacking. In simple terms, it is considered by Freud that females lack what men's have, okay, especially with regard to phallus, and it is said that females have castration complex. It is put forth by Freud. There is also this concept of desire. Desire is the gap between the demand for love and the appetite for satisfaction. Okay, between love and satisfaction comes desire. So moving back to what we were discussing, the Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex is an important concept put forth by Sigmund Freud. We study that even outside literary theory. When we study some work of art in literature, at times this comes up. Right. For example, Sons and Lovers. I'm not very sure whether you have studied, but for the BA students, they need to study the Sons and Lovers textbook. It is a novel written by D.H. Lawrence. It is a British novel. So in this novel, this aspect of Oedipus complex comes up. If you're interested, you can read about this. I have also put a video of this. If interested, you can check that out. So basically, this term of Oedipus complex comes from the story of Oedipus. Are you aware of the story of Oedipus? Anybody? Yes. Yes. So it is based on a play written by Sophocles. Okay, he was one of the tragedy writers of the ancient era. So, the story of Oedipus is mentioned in the text Oedipus Rex, which is a tragedy. The story goes on like Oedipus unknowingly marries his mother and kills his father. If you're interested, you may refer to the story. This happens unintentionally and unknowingly, but later Freud took this concept and developed the Oedipus complex. So a child with Oedipus complex would be seeing his father as if an obstacle. The wish that starts taking shape is to get rid of the father in order to take his place with his mother. So further manifestations of the Oedipus complex are fears of castration and identification of the father with authority. So these are important. It is mentioned in your study material also. The fear of castration and identification of father with authority. Alright. Now we will discuss Freud's idea about the interpretation of dreams. I already gave you an introduction regarding dreams. A dream is seen by Freud as a disguised fulfillment of a suppressed or repressed wish. I already told you, it is said that we see as dreams some of our repressed and suppressed desires. Alright, so in that sense, it comes to be a kind of compromise between the demands of impulses and the intensity of the various repressing forces. So dream would be more or less a compromise between these two. So what needs to be kept in mind here is that dreams are only one part of our access to the unconscious. Dreams are in a way road to our unconscious, but remember, these dreams are only one part of our access to the unconscious. So jogs, misreadings, failures of memory, and unaccountable slips of tongue are all considered to belong to the same category. That is, repressed thoughts at times becomes slips of tongue or misreadings or jokes, etc. So Freud stresses that the interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious, into the unknown. Now let's discuss this concept of dream work. Dream work is a key term in Freud's work, Interpretation of Dreams. Interpretation of Dreams is one of the seminal works by Sigmund Freud, published in the year I think it's in 2000. No, 1900. Interpretation of Dream is published in the year 1899. Yes, 1899. This year of publication you may jot down because it is important. So, in this particular textbook, dream work is defined as the process or piece of mental activity of which dream thoughts are converted into the dream content. So condensation, displacement, representation and secondary revision are 4 activities that go into dream work. Condensation, displacement, representation and secondary division. 4 activities that go into dream work. Our textbook also gives you a brief description of these. Condensation, what is that? Condensation comes about when the manifest dream has a smaller content than the latent one and is thus an abbreviated translation of it. The smaller content, the smaller content and abbreviated translation. The dream by itself may put on a disguise. Representation refers to the transposition of thought into imagery, and secondary revision is part of the mind's attempt to order, revise, supplement the contents of a dream so as to bring about an accessible or intelligible item. It's basically what I explained before regarding a dream and how it works. Alright. So devices like displacement and condensation disguise the expressed fears and wishes contained in the dream. They also fashion various kinds of material into something which can be represented in a dream. For example, images, symbols, metaphors, etc. So, as of a revision, so far we have discussed some of the main ideas put forth by Sigmund Freud. I told you what repression is. Repressed feelings appear in dreams at times. Then, one of the major concepts by Sigmund Freud is regarding the unconscious. Alright? Then, talking cure in psychoanalytic therapy. Then, which are the 3 psychic zones? The ego, the id and the superego. The id works on pleasure principle. The superego works on morality principle. And the id works on reality principle. Then we looked at the psychic zones. Yes, psychic zones we already saw. Then we looked at the 3 zones of psychosexual development. Yes, the 3 zones are namely oral zones, anal zone and genital zone as mentioned in your study material. Very good, Adira. I saw that you were managing to text in between too. Then we mentioned Oedipus complex. Let me ask you a question. There is a counterpart, a female counterpart to Oedipus complex. Do you know the name? Yes, that's correct. Electra complex. Okay. Oedipus complex is regarding the male child and his mother. Electra complex is regarding the female child and her father. Okay. So you may have an idea regarding that also. Then we discussed dreams and how they represent the repressed thoughts of an individual and how dreams or the interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities. We also mentioned the work interpretation of dreams. Now we look at Jacques Lacan.